Well, good morning, everybody. This is the 27th program, and we seem to be making our way into, finally, the sacrifice petals of the Egoic Lotus. Petals number 7, 8, and 9, whether eventually they revolve in a clockwise direction or a counterclockwise direction remains to be seen. There are some references that seem to suggest that they will revolve in exactly the same way as the earlier two tiers of petals, the first and second. But the way this diagram is drawn, with the knowledge petal touching the third subplane of the higher mental plane, the love petal the second, and the sacrifice petal the third, it seems that the rotation could be considered in the counterclockwise direction, which is the natural order of the zodiac. But this, of course, might simply be due to the constraints of how the petals can be drawn. So we have read that at some point all the three tiers of 9 petals are rotating in one direction and the synthesis petals in the opposite direction. Okay, let us proceed then with the third tier of petals, the sacrifice tier. And I'd like to simply read what it's going to say here on page 541. I've brought it in from TCF 541. The Petal of Knowledge for the mental plane. Its unfoldment marks the period wherein the man consciously utilizes all that he has gained, or is gaining, under the law, for the definite benefit of humanity. It sounds like somewhat like emptying the bowl, in this case of its knowledge content. There is other content in the bowl or the chalice. Each of the groups of petals is distinguished by a predominant coloring, knowledge on the physical plane, with the coloring of the other two subsidiary, love on the astral plane with the light of sacrifice weaker in tone than the other two, which practically show forth in equal brilliancy. On the mental plane, the light of sacrifice comes to full display, and all that is seen is colored by that light. Well, the light of sacrifice in this case seems to be the yellow light. It is the Buddhic impulse. It's connected with the fourth ray, and we realize from studying the laws of the soul that the law of sacrifice is actually ruled by the fourth ray. So love is the coloring of the astral plane. With the light of sacrifice weaker in tone, there is, of course, a yellow that does appear on the in the love petals, in the sixth of the love petals, but it is not as strong, and nor would it be as strong, I suppose, in the third petal, as will be the yellow of sacrifice within the sacrifice petals themselves. So let us begin, and we'll take it part by part, as we have been doing. I think that's the best way for us to carefully analyze. Of course, much will be left out, but then you can supply what you find to be missing, or if you find that certain correlations are erroneous, then you can correct them. We're all working in group form here, and each person is bringing what he can to the pool of knowledge, and others bring what they can, and then finally the clear and corrected presentation stands forth as the result of a group effort. So it must be increasingly obvious that the evolutionary unfoldment of the human being is greatly illuminated by a close study of the Egoic Lotus. How would we know the phases and their inner qualitative results? They look like phenomenal results, but they are in a sense, because all is taking place in the dense physical body of the Solar Logos, but they are also qualitative results, and they have to do with empowerments within the Egoic Lotus, which provides the energy drive which chakras normally would, and later with the disappearance of the Egoic Lotus, one can presume that there will be worlds of energy or chakras formed on the subplanes where the Egoic Lotus used to express, and these may only be useful for expression through a Maya Virupa, but perhaps not. Perhaps at the fourth degree, if the Egoic Lotus disappears and the man is still alive and moving towards the fifth initiation in the same vehicle, then those chakras will necessarily appear where the Egoic Lotus once held sway. So the evolutionary unfoldment is illuminated by this study, by its energy and force associations, and by its unfoldments. The unfolding, see, and remember that term unfoldment is a general term. Whoop, that's not what I want, is it? Let's see here. Okay, that would be more like it. So let's see, and further, for ease of reading, at least, I have this dashboard on the right of the computer, right of the screen, so sometimes you'll see the text as if it's moved over too far to the left, but that's simply so I can see and look at the dashboard with its proper indications as well. The term unfoldments, this is a general term, and it involves, let's see if I can remember them, organization, vitalization, unfoldment, opening, which are pretty much the same, and then complete or full unfoldment or opening. Sometimes when he says something is open and he doesn't use completely open, we understand that there is still some way to travel, some way to go. So the unfolding subjective flower reveals to the astute eye, and the eye of the, and I want to say high initiate, the exact condition of the evolving human individual. If we can understand with a degree of detachment from our own solar plexus and psychological reactions exactly where we stand on the ladder of evolution, we can do something constructive about improving our position, and that's exactly what the Master seeks to do for us if he takes us in charge, as he did some of those students who were working in the times of Alice Bailey when the Tibetan was forming these outer groups affiliated with his ashram. So we are now entering a study of those petals which have specifically to do with the process of initiation, not just by reflex, the way the fifth and the sixth petal, I believe, open by reflex, but through the application of the rod of initiation. So we're dealing with the first through third initiations, and sometimes, it's at one point, it seemed that the third initiation was called the final initiation. I would say at least of the series, which concern the 9 petals. If the knowledge tier can be considered the Lemurian petals and the love tier the Atlantean, then the sacrifice petals can be correlated to the Aryan stage of development. And we say this is the Aryan stage. Well, let's just say it's not a hard and fast division, but it's reasonably indicative. But actually, I can correct this somewhat and say that the first petal is really Lemurian. The second petal is Atlantean. The third petal is early Aryan. The fourth, the second tier is increasingly Aryan, and the high ideal for the Aryan root race, A-R-Y-A-Y-R-R, okay, Aryan root race is held forth in the developments of the third tier. It is also true that we can loosely connect each tier with one of the 3 root races, but there's a lot of development that goes on in the second tier which can be correlated with the stage of development of our Aryan race thus far. But let's say stage of development of the Aryan race in the future can be correlated with the development or unfoldment of the sacrifice tier. And of course this will continue into the 6th root race, which will be intuitive for the an intuitive root race for the cream of the race, so to speak, the avant-garde of the race, but at the same time will offer initiation possibilities for the advancing people that are still within the Aryan consciousness. The knowledge tier is associated with the physical etheric plane, loosely. The love tier with the astral plane, and the sacrifice tier with the mental plane. But of course, even the third or knowledge petal of the knowledge tier can be associated with the mental plane and mental achievements within the hall of ignorance. And in terms of real altruistic love, it's only by the time we reach the 6th petal that the real effort is being made to care in a loving manner about others, and it is an effort. The sacrifice tier requires soul infusion of the mind, and that's the way. Okay, this tier requires RQ requires soul infusion of the mind held increasingly steady in the light. So it has to be said that people such as ourselves who are studying the blue books and working with sincerity as aspirants and probationary disciples have already 1 foot in the sacrifice tier. And this is especially so if we're hovering around the period of the first initiation and then, of course, onwards. There's not going to be a first initiation unless work is being done, organizing and vitalizing the seventh petal. And then at the appropriate moment, measured by astrology and by the masters and the initiator's assessment of the condition of the man, the first initiation will occur. Astrology is very important in that, and Leo is an important sign, but so is Capricorn, and I'll get into all of those signs of initiation. I think I've done it many times in many places, so much so that they're even lost on this computer. Anyway, the great initiations, which we commonly study, are called the monastic initiations, and they are the initiations of Manus, or of man. So they, great, well, maybe I shouldn't capitalize that. Great initiations involve the mental plane, in fact, the higher mental plane, and occur within the causal body. But they also require a degree, well, mental focus. We can't call it mental polarization yet, because that only occurs between the second and third initiation, which means work is being done in the third petal. You understand the convention when I say work is being done in a petal. I mean within the three worlds, in the type of experiences and processes to be correlated with the unfoldment of that petal. So we will first offer general impressions before becoming specific in terms of astrological and rayological chakric factors. And I can see, you know, I will probably have some corrections to make. I have wrestled with this subject, and let's just say, okay, qualities, okay, and it looks to me, it does look to me as if my approach now is just a little different than when I formulated some of this material. See, I am using, I am using the three petaled approach of the past, present, and future. The idea is working simultaneous, is that the individual is working in different ways simultaneously in three petals. Now that's not hard and fast, but it seems to me that once the evolutionary process really gets going, and perhaps after we get out of the first petal, there's always work being done ahead, and it's particularly important when initiation comes into the picture, because the reflex results of the initiatory application of the rod is working out in the second tier of petals. That's the reflex. So when work is being done in the seventh petal, and the rod of initiation is applied at the right and just moment, then there is a reflex action in the fifth petal. And when work is being done in the eighth petal and the rod is applied, there's going to be a reflex action in the sixth petal, and of course some further reflex action in the seventh, when the eighth is the avant-garde, and some further reflex action in the sixth when the seventh is the foremost petal. So it's an interrelated process, and I'm going to try to correct anything that I've said that would make it seem that we're simply proceeding one petal at a time. The idea of sequence is, of course, correct, but there is an overlappingness which cannot be ignored. And as we all know, when we look at our life, we are involved in different kinds of activities which have to them a different spiritual strata, a distinctive spiritual stratum. And we, sometimes we're involved in very high activities, sometimes middling, and sometimes a little more customary for us. And they will relate to different types of petal experiences. Okay, well, I think really the only way, is one day to be able to look at not only your own series of lives, but the series of lives of others in an objective manner. And I'm sure the Master does this. The solar angels, of course, has this view. We are told that the solar angel is able to include within its purview a fair number of lives before the present one, and foresee lives in the future, and the Master does this to a certain degree. There's no sense for either one of these great beings to go back into Lemurian times or Atlantean times and see what it all looked like at that point, because so much has been worked out and so much has come to a kind of resolution. Maybe in a specific research project looking for the origin of a particular difficulty, that might be possible. But in examining, let's say, 5 lives before and several lives ahead, one can really see what the trend should be and what will be important in the development of this particular life. And so thus, through the right advice, the Master can save the Chela a great deal of time by helping to orient the Chela towards what is truly important. And the solar angel will have its own methods, which we cannot presume to know, to help direct and guide. Since this is the petal of knowledge for the mental plane, and since it is knowledge and the mental plane, it's pretty obvious that the 3rd and 5th rays will be important here, whatever may be the ray of the soul. Of course, according to the ray of the soul, different petal processes will be emphasized and their speed will be differential, because one can proceed faster along one's own line, or let's say within the experiences of a petal attuned to one's own line. Yet everybody does have the 3rd and 5th rays, regardless of the soul ray. From another perspective, there is a numerical ray progression which should be observed as we move from petal to petal. So since this is the 7th petal, we will have to explore the meaning of the 7th ray in relation to it. There is no 8th ray, except in the minds of a few fairly deluded people, and no 9th ray, even though there is an 8th and 9th path out of the solar system. But I guess people who are convinced of the 12 rays or the 8th and 9th ray and all the rest of it are not so close to taking the path out of the solar system. This applies to all the foregoing petals as well, beginning with the first ray, 2nd ray, and so forth, in relation to which the first ray, let's say, for the first petal, however primitive its expression, must be important. And this is the factor of survival. Just the way the beginning of some kind of love is found in the 2nd petal, and mentality according to the 3rd ray is found in the 3rd petal, and the 4th, the 4th petal has something to do with the initial struggle between the pairs of opposites, and the 5th with a keen discrimination. The 5th kingdom comes in, and the solar angel from the 5th creative hierarchy comes in, and a keen discrimination of what belongs to either of those pairs of opposites, and the light grows according to the 5th ray, the most luminous of all the ray lords, and then the 6th petal with the mystical 6th ray operating and the striving towards the Christ center, and the longing for the fifth kingdom. And then the seventh petal, where some sort of return flow towards the world, heaven coming to earth, the heaven of knowledge, a heaven of accumulated knowledge, coming to ground itself in the lower three worlds, because the man is already becoming or is an initiate of the first degree, and then has to begin to return what has been accumulated, since service is the keynote of all the initiatory process. Okay, so its unfoldment marks the period wherein the man consciously utilizes all that he has gained or is gaining under the law. There's the seventh ray again, and the first, since it is the first petal of the sacrifice tier, for the definite benefit of humanity. So the key note is service. The seventh ray planet is Uranus, ruling Aquarius, the sign of service. There are many connections that we can make, but you know, if you feel that, let's just say the storehouse is relatively full, maybe, you know, 99% of the incarnations have been lived through, maybe 99.9. The storehouse is relatively full, and from its content, gifts are made to the world, part of emptying the bowl. I remember that phrase because it made a big impression on me in the year 1985 when I was working with the astrologer Charles Jane. He was a really fine technical astrologer and one of the pioneers in the astrological field. And I would go to his house every Sunday morning, and we would talk about all kinds of things. And then one day he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I feel the shivers." I says, "I feel as if there's an emptying of the bowl." Well, that was in another context. I only knew him 1 year because he died on December 31st, 1985. And I think I came to his house for the first time around January 1st, or right in there after the New Year. Yeah, or at least in the early part of January 1985. So he had a premonition that he was passing on what he knew. And indeed he did, to me and through me to others who more fully developed some of his material more fully than I could have done. But he was, in a sense, emptying the bowl. So whatever we have accumulated is not just ours. It is always for the benefit of the others. And there is this quotation in the Bible that says that the seed must fall into the ground and bear fruit, implying that if it doesn't, it has no worth. So all of our knowledge and faculty is meant for the upliftment of the general whole, and whatever work we've done on it and whatever new light we've been able to generate, it's all for others, who really are the self anyway, but it's all for others and cannot be hoarded by this little emanation of the One. So its unfoldment marks the period wherein the man consciously utilizes all that he has gained or is gaining under the law. And there's that word utilization, a word which is so much connected with the third ray or fifth ray. Okay. The factor of utilization with the implications of practicality. It suggests the third and seventh rays, and also the utilitarian approach of the fifth ray. The third ray expresses what has been called the process of the utilization of the many for the use of the one. That is an amazing thought. The one is the one being, of course, service of the one, Gemini, third sign, and therefore connected by numerical resonance with the third ray. And the fifth ray, too, has a utilitarian approach. We must say the fifth ray has a utilitarian approach, and the seventh ray is practical, if anything. And I think I brought in from Letters on Occult Meditation, when the egoic ray is the third, or activity adaptability ray, the method of destroying the causal body, this is what this is all about, is somewhat different. Not so much the driving forward of the first ray, not so much the gradual expansion as the systematic adaptation, the gradual expansion of the second ray, as the systematic adaptation of all knowledge and of all means to the end in view. You can see that it has something to do with this third petal. So that utilization, we might substitute systematic adaptation of all knowledge and all means and methods to the end in view. It is in fact the process of the utilization of the many for the use of the one. And when we pass through third ray experiences on a high turn of the spiral, that will be our method. The thought of gain or acquisition is again related to the third ray. We find so many people there gathering things together. It's not the same as inclusion, which involves a kind of active identification and seeing oneself the same as, but a gathering together of all that may be thought to be necessary and even more, and when it's too much more, we call it greed. Those egoically upon the third ray destroy the causal body through systematic acquisition or accumulation leading to an excessive fullness, and I would say, which simply has to be used at last for the benefit of all. A real treasure house of knowledge. But any form can only stand so much accumulation, and eventually it will break. So there are different ways of breaking the causal body, all the way from the hammer stroke of the first ray to the incantations of the seventh. So the orientation here is definitely towards service, and much intelligence is involved in expressing that service. We do remember by correlation that the law of service is the third law of the seven soul laws, and so we find here at the very first that we are dealing with he is utilizing, consciously utilizes all that he has gained for the definite benefit of humanity. It's a definite service statement, and I guess it's real service, and it's beginning to move towards the non-expectation of return, which is achieved in the eighth petal. So there is movement towards the non-expectation of return, which is achieved in the eighth petal. At one point in the eighth petal, we don't know, but probably it's connected with the second initiation, which I think will not indicate the complete full unfoldment of that petal, but a good deal of it, and that complete unfoldment, I suppose, will come when the entire tier is completely unfolded at the third degree. Each of the groups of petals are distinguished by a predominant coloring. Knowledge on the physical plane with that's the coloring. He says knowledge is a coloring, I guess, with the coloring of the other two subsidiary, and I suppose in every other, well, I think there's knowledge, love, and sacrifice. I guess those are the colorings in one sense. So knowledge, let's get this straight. Knowledge, love, and sacrifice are the colorings in this sense. knowledge on the physical plane, with the other two subsidiary. Love is the coloring of the astral plane, with the light of sacrifice weaker in tone than the other two, which practically show forth an equal brilliancy. Okay, so in other words, knowledge has been preserved and is not diminished simply because we are working in the love tier. All right, I think I understand it better now than I did when I first looked at it. During the unfoldment of the love tier, DK is telling us that knowledge and love show forth with equal brilliancy, and only sacrifice is weaker. Well, the yellow of sacrifice is in every one of the petals, every one of the sacrifice petals. It's only in one of the love petals. And it also exists even in the knowledge petals, in one of the petals. During the unfoldment of the knowledge petal, knowledge is strongest. Love and sacrifice are present, but yes, to a subsidiary extent. They do show forth, of course, because you can never have any process with one of the three, with any of the three, not present in some small measures, like saying, try to live life without all three dimensions being present. May we infer that the sacrifice tier unfolds knowledge, love, that when the sacrifice tier unfolds, knowledge, love, and sacrifice will demonstrate more or less equally. I think it is a reasonable inference based upon the fact, the statement here that the other two show forth in equal brilliancy, practically show forth in equal brilliancy, for all practical purposes, I think is what he means here. Practically, I think, for all practical purposes. Knowledge and love are called, interestingly, colorings. They are divine qualities which qualify the first and second tier. And, well, you know, knowledge, love, and sacrifice are qualities of being which veil being. So the different qualities are always are colors, and they are always considered to be veils. On the mental plane, the light of sacrifice comes to its full display, and this is conscious sacrifice, and all is seen colored by that light, and the related color of the light is yellow. And, well, he talks about yellow in relation to the fruition of autumn, the harmonizing of all in autumn. It's a kind of a synthetic color. There have been some theories put forth concerning its relation to the previous solar system and the transmission of life from the previous solar system to the present. So sometimes yellow is connected with the third ray as well as green. And why is this? You know, when dealing with monads on the third ray, DK uses the color yellow and not green. This is so really interesting. And yet, the previous solar system was the green solar system. You kind of wonder whether the third ray monads did not come in large part from the previous solar system, when yellow could have been a color of the third ray. But that's another matter for research and for direct observation. In any case, he talks about human relations of human beings whose primary color is red, blue, or yellow. And we will have to observe the interactions of such beings. And since it's their primary color, it's the color, I suppose, displayed upon the monadic plane. I mean, not by the essence of the monad, which is pure being, but by the coloring of the monad, the additional quality which it carries in some manner. The essence has no color, but when there is expression through matter of different levels of density, that color will appear. Exactly how remains to be seen. It is interesting to consider the light of sacrifice, just as we consider the light of knowledge and the light of love. And what would we mean by that? You know that we would mean that each of these, knowledge, love, and sacrifice, is a revealer. In other words, when we know, we obviously see new things come to light. When we love, love reveals that which could not be seen when love did not exist. When we sacrifice, maybe even more is revealed. Thus the light of sacrifice, the light of knowledge, the light of love. When thinking of the light of sacrifice, the mind turns to Mercury, expressing the fourth ray in its soul nature, the ray ruling the first law of the soul, the law of sacrifice. And yeah, it's the star of conflict. I'm wondering if the Mercurian tendency to anchor itself on a high level and still distribute itself on a low level is not part of the revelation of sacrifice. To know that one is high and yet to work in a sphere that is much lower must have an important revelation. Light always reveals. Light brings forth the emergence into consciousness of that which has been concealed. So it's obvious that the light of knowledge brings forth still more knowledge. In that light we shall see light, we are told. Love, we know, is also a great revealer. I guess one has to have the experience, but let's say one sees people in a certain light, and then one begins to love the person, and many more important things are revealed that were typically closed when there was not a sufficiency of love. Love sees very deeply, more deeply. So, as I was suggesting, carrying the idea further, sacrifice is the same, and sacrifice has its own revealing light, and there are many important revelations which will only come to those who sacrifice. We are told later we will understand the necessity for the fourth initiation and the tremendous sacrifice or renunciation required. And do we yet? Well, maybe not until that moment is upon us and we're engaged in it that we see the great necessity of it. I mean, those who do the will of God shall know. So once we're engaged in the process, then we see, we can't say, oh, show me and then I'll do it. First I want to know, then I'll do. No, we actually have to, this is the amazing reversal. We have to do what we know is right, and then the light related to that doing breaks forth. So we might say, then, sacrifice and you will understand, just as we have said, love and you will understand. And we have been told that those who do the will of God, those who sacrifice shall know. The will of God is basically sacrifice and giving. The gifts of the Spirit. Dane Rudhyar's book, The Gifts of the Spirit, talked about the great repositories of energy that exist in each one of the astrological signs and how they have to be given to the lesser lives. So the light of sacrifice is, from one perspective, yellow, and associated with both Mercury yellow and the fourth ray yellow. The fourth ray, as stated above, yes, rules the law of sacrifice. That we've been saying that as we go. The knowledge petal in the sacrifice tier, then, is the seventh petal over all. And following the usual method of assigning a petal to a sign of the zodiac and proceeding in the counterclockwise manner, we have Libra, the seventh sign, associated with the seventh petal. We beginning at Aries, working in the normal zodiacal order, counterclockwise, we have Libra. Libra is the hub of the wheel, in a way. It's called that in astrology, and it signifies a synthetic process in which the gains of the first 6 signs are gathered together and to be used for the next, the next signs that are forthcoming. Libra, in a way, is divided. And I'm remembering that DK said there was once a time when there were 11 signs of the zodiac. But we have I guess we have 6 before Libra, and Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. And is that possible? And 6 signs after Libra. That's right. We don't. It's not exactly dividing the zodiac exactly in half, but if we gave half of Libra to one side of the zodiac, the earlier part, and half of Libra to the other, would be an exact division. And maybe we could say something the same of Aries. Anyway, for practical purposes, it is the hub of the wheel. And we note a very strong third ray emphasis in relation to this 7th petal. Because Libra, of course, is transmitter of the third ray. It's said to transmit only the third ray of active intelligence at this time, in this world period, so the correspondence does apply, and we might consider Libra a sign promoting skillful manipulation, harmonious manipulation, we might say. So harmonious manipulation. It also has its altruistic tendencies, so the manipulation, especially here, is accomplished on behalf of those who are served, skillfully, with skill in action. In the case of the 7th petal, a growing number of beings are served, lots of skill in action, because of the harmonizing ability, because of harmonizing abilities. Yes. So from the counterclockwise perspective, beginning with Aries, we have, well, that's interesting. We have again the Libran influence, it looks like. Let me let me count and be sure. So we have, I'll count on my fingers after all. Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, and sure enough, Libra. A double Libran influence. It is coming or going. It is the 7th petal is the Libran petal. Of course, we could begin with Pisces as well, working clockwise. That's the only way to really work with Pisces. Go forth into matter. And the sign Virgo shows up, signifying the purificatory processes related to the first initiation. And that purification must simply continue while one is an aspirant to true initiation, which is that occurring at the 3rd degree. From a certain point of view, all are aspirants before the 3rd degree. Master DK works with aspirants to initiation. Initiation of the 1st, 2nd, and even 3rd degree. And the various self-denying disciplines of discipleship still being worked out there, and also, I suppose, discrimination in knowledge would be useful as related to knowledge which has to be dispensed, because we know how strong Mercury is in Virgo, and here we're dealing with the sacrificial giving of all accumulated knowledge and capacity, skill, for those who are in need of it. So once Virgo and Libra were considered to be one sign, here they are, in a sense, working together in the same petal. With regard to the 3 petals of the sacrifice tier, we can apportion the 7th petal to the first initiation, the 8th to the first initiation, the 8th to the second initiation, and the 9th to the 3rd initiation. It seems pretty clear from what has been said throughout the books that this is appropriate. Certainly, there are definite statements that we just looked at about the opening of all 9 petals at the 3rd initiation. So there's much hidden complexity in this assignment, but in general it will serve to indicate a necessary truth, the later opening of the 3 sacrifice petals is definitely occurring on the path of initiation. A complete opening also of the 5th and 6th is occurring, and there will not be a complete opening of all these 3 until the 3 sacrifice petals, at least this is my present assumption, until the 3rd initiation. There will not be a complete, maybe it makes it a big word, complete opening of the sacrifice petals until the 3rd initiation, and there it is really complete. And we saw that just a little while ago when we were working on petal 6. I gathered laboriously some references and demonstrated that to be the case. Is it worth going back and demonstrating that again? You know, just, well, this wasn't so far, was it? There it is. By the time the 3rd initiation is reached, a wondrous transformation has transpired. The outer sphere is palpitating with every color in the rainbow. Red too. Doesn't seem to show in the petals, but every way. It says with every color in the rainbow, and red is in the rainbow, and is of wide radius. The streams of electrical energy circulating in it are so powerful that they are escaping beyond the periphery of the circle, the sphere, resembling the rays of the sun. The 9 petals are fully unfolded, forming a gracious setting for the central jewel, and their orange hue of the 9 petals is now of a gorgeous translucence, because they can pass the light of the jewel through them, shot with many colors. That of the egoic ray predominating, so even if the egoic ray is the first ray, if it's every color of the rainbow, then red will also be expected. But the normal color of the petals is not that. But perhaps in this final stage of display, red is somehow included. And the triangle is scintillating, and so forth and so forth. So that's a really important reference, and let's see, where does it come from? Let us look here, and we'll use this term, every color of the rainbow, and I think it will be found in page 763 of Cosmic Fire. So I want to put that down, as it's important to know where we are. So this is TCF 763. Okay. And, yeah, there we go. All right, so that wasn't such a bad excursion. Could have been much worse. Okay. And we come back to this point. So, the mind is turned to Mercury. Light reveals. Sacrifice is the same. Those who know the will of God shall do. Those who do the will of God shall know. The yellow of the law of sacrifice. And I think we were just at this point. So we can, I think it's very important to think of the 3 sacrifice petals in terms of the 3 initiations, which means that the rod of power, first by the Bodhisattva and then by the Lord of the world, is applied to them, not applied to the petals of the love tear, but applied to the petals of the sacrifice tear, causing reflex actions earlier, and never complete unfoldment, I think, until the rod of power wielded, the flaming diamond wielded by the Lord of the world, is applied to the 9th petal. Then everything opens up, and we have the kind of description we have just read on 763. So just as we assigned the earth signs to the 3 petals of knowledge tier, and water signs to the petals of the love tier, in classical astrology, we can understand why that is so. So it is reasonable to assign the fire signs to the mental or sacrificial tier, especially since the air signs really relate to God in the very first of the formulas in Dhyana 2, Discipleship in 2. In astrological terms, air is associated with mentality often in classical astrology, and there is justification for this assignment, but it's the fiery sacrifice we're talking about. The realm of air in occultism is more specifically associated with the faculty of the intuition, though Sagittarius is a fiery intuitive sign and bordering, by one method of counting, toward the 9, bordering on the air signs in that respect. So the association of fire with mind is also explicit in occultism. So we're speaking then of fiery sacrifice. We are dealing with fiery sacrifice. Shall we continue, however, with listing the cardinal signs first and the mutable signs last, as we have in relation to the earlier 2 tiers? This I have talked about as we've gone into discussion. There are qualities of Aries which seem to fit the 7th petal process. Indeed, because we're dealing with the mind. And Aries, I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule, and Mercury is a esoteric ruler of Aries and has to do with knowledge and the sacrifice of knowledge, but the fit is not, well, exact or complete. Aries is mental and synthetic, but also extremely willful. And so how willful it is, being the major sign of the first ray, we see a reason to assign it also to the 9th petal, as I have described. And that has come to me much more vividly with this re-examination of the whole egoic lotus. I've just begun to see how much Aries is related to the 3rd initiation and to the apprehension of being. So this is a question, and I kind of want it both ways. I want to start with Aries and end with Aries. Start with Sagittarius and end with Sagittarius. Sagittarius might be a better fit. As with Sagittarius, there is a definite association with the higher mind and with the broad expanse of, and I would say, the application of knowledge. But, of course, Aries is much associated with the head and with knowledge, the mind and the head and the brain and all of that. So it's not exclusive. While Aries can be associated with the first initiation, indeed it can, because one is, as it were, breaking into the kingdom of God, so definitely it's a whole new way of being. Sagittarius is also associated with the aspiration necessary for the 1st and 2nd degree processes, and in the, there it is, that's the one I was looking for. I was going to go on a hunt, but I guess I went on a hunt 7 years ago, and I found that. Intuition governing aspiration, Sagittarius. That's so interesting because the intuitive revelation looming on ahead is what almost unconsciously governs aspiration towards what? Towards that very revelation, even though the aspiring one does not know. But yet there's some power coming from the intuition which orients the aspiration in increasingly better direction. So, soul consciousness in the early stages, initiation 1 and 2. So it does seem, with initiation 1 and 2, associated with Sagittarius. Of course, we can also associate it with even initiation number 6, outward bound on one of the paths of the way of the higher evolution. And of course, Sagittarius is the major distributor of the 6th ray. There's many other ways of using Sagittarius, but here initiation number 1 and 2, and with with Aries, definite connection with initiation number 3, although, of course, with, as I say, sort of breaking into the kingdom of God and starting the new regime and reversing the wheel which leads that way, it can be associated with the first initiation. There's so many ways to achieve initiation under the various signs of the zodiac. Some of them are popularly, frequently assigned to a particular initiation, like Leo to initiation 1, Scorpio initiation 2, and Capricorn to initiation 3, but that's not the whole of it by any means. That's not the full story. Scorpio is connected with all the first 3 initiations, Capricorn with all the first 5, and maybe beyond. Leo, not only with the first, but you can find a place for it in relation to the heart of the sun at the second, and to the soul luminosity at the third, and its defeat at the fourth, and so forth. So one has to realize that there are many roads to initiation, and that if one is due to take that initiation, different astrological factors can be used to see to that intended accomplishment. It might be better to use the progression mutable fixed cardinal. Well, you know, I'm going both ways. Mutable fixed cardinal, Sagittarius, Leo, Aries. Then the sequence we have been using when looking at the tiers, which is cardinal fixed mutable, from the perspective of the 4 elements. The utilization of Aries in relation to the 9th petal and the 3rd initiation seems correspondentially accurate. It's kind of an end that is a beginning, as the 3rd initiation involves a realization of pure being, to which realization Aries is definitely related. So we will take a look at some very interesting statements from esoteric astrology, and one which will demonstrate the correspondential accuracy of Aries with the 3rd initiation. The secret of Aries is the secret of beginnings. Of course, the beginning of the phase when one enters the 1st initiation as well, of cycles and of emerging opportunity. At the 3rd initiation, the initiate begins to understand the life of the spirit, or the highest aspect. Until that time, he has expressed first the life of form, and then the life of the soul within that form. This experience is, the experience of spirit, I presume, is of so high a nature that only those who have passed through it could in any way comprehend anything I might say. So definitely the connection of Aries with the 3rd initiation, where the monad comes into sight. So the assignment of Leo, you know, of the fire signs to the central petal seems secure. But what should we do with Aries and Sagittarius? And I'd say use them at each petal, because they both have different meanings. They have meanings which are appropriate for each of those petals. I guess if I had to, well, Sagittarius is somehow very appropriate at the 9th petal. It leads towards the 3rd initiation, but Aries really is the consummation of it, and of course Capricorn has its place there as well. It cannot be denied that the energies of Gemini and Aquarius can also be reasonably associated with the 7th petal. They are about knowledge and the distribution of knowledge. For one thing, Gemini is directly related to the secret of the 1st initiation, to which the 7th petal processes plus the rod of initiation admit. So here it is said of Gemini, the secret of Gemini has to be grasped at the first initiation, because it is the mystery of the relation of the father, mother, and child. The birth of the Christ child upon the physical plane is the consummating glory of the Gemini force. And who would have thought that? You know, always with Capricorn and Virgo, we seem to understand something of the first initiation, and Leo has its place as well, being in the horoscope of the first degree initiate, but this is DK's statement regarding Gemini, and of course it's about knowledge. It's a knowledge petal, and Gemini itself is about knowledge. So we can find Gemini and Aquarius for the distribution and giving of knowledge most definitely. And if Sagittarius is found at that first petal, then Gemini is its opposite. And, well, you know, there are just many ways to think here, but Leo at the first initiation and Aquarius is its opposite. So I've already introduced the idea that choosing the opposite sign is almost certainly finding another sign in relation to the process which one is considering. So since in general we are dealing with the process of initiation, the sign of initiation Capricorn must be included, not only in relation to the first petal in the sacrificed here, but in relation to all three and indeed beyond, because 5 is the number of initiations connected with Capricorn. And who knows? I mean, does it go to the 6th and 7th? At least we have 5, which are, in a certain sense, Brahmic initiations. When we're dealing with 7 initiations, the lower 5 have to be considered Brahmic, and Capricorn related to Saturn, well, yeah, both of them are Brahmic indicators. From the planetary perspective, the entire sacrifice tier is ruled by Mercury or by Uranus, depending on whether we are considering rulership of the tiers in relation to the triangle Mars, Venus, Mercury, which are lesser planetary entities, or using the synthesizing triad Saturn, Neptune, Uranus. We can certainly see the connection. Saturn, Mars, closely related. Neptune, Venus, Neptune the higher octave. Uranus, Mercury, Uranus the higher octave of Mercury. So they do both fit there. Such an interpenetration and mixing of planetary rays is the truth of the matter. And we, with our rather clumsy and concrete mentality, try to take a very rapidly mobile, scintillating situation of intermixture and freeze it in some concrete manner, as if we were somehow, in doing that, grasping the truth. Because the process of initiation is ruled in general by Venus, representing the solar angels, and the solar angels are preparing us for initiation and have their role in each of the initiation ceremonies, Venus will naturally be important in relation to the 7th petal, which indicates the first initiation. We can say that initiation is the overcoming of Mars by Venus in a certain way. Say, initiation is the overcoming of Mars by Venus, we will say. Okay. Then Jupiter. Jupiter rules the expansion of consciousness, equated with entry into causal consciousness, which initiation signifies. Because remember that initiation occurs within the causal body for the first 3 initiations. Jupiter, a second-rate planet, will contribute to that considerable expansion of consciousness which the first initiation represents. And, well, in general, we are dealing with the soul nature here, and its progressive domination of the personality, which really is effective, beginning with the first initiation. And Jupiter also represents sight and vision. As the ruler of Sagittarius, with Jupiter one always sees more. It is so with Venus as well. So the sight within the chamber of initiation of the solar angel. Jupiter has a close connection with the sun as well, and the sun is, well, Jupiter is sometimes considered, if one follows the hint, as the orthodox ruler of Leo. Maybe, in fact, the sun and the moon, those luminaries, cannot be considered ever as real rulers of anything. And that with Leo, it would be the sequence Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, with the sun as the central luminary and essentially a veil for planets. Just as the moon is a veil for Neptune in relation to the sign Cancer. So there's a wider perspective here, and we can understand that if Sagittarius is the ruler of the seventh petal, then Jupiter, of course, would be important. So higher mind is entering. As a matter of fact, there's even a place where higher mind is associated with the fourth petal. We'll see that when we start to study the colors, and we'll try to resolve that strange thought. Except, you know, if we're talking about the higher of the pairs of opposites, the soul. Now, when I talk about higher mind here, I'm talking about triadal mind. And Libra rules triadal mind. Libra in relation to the third ray, and it rules the spiritual triad as a whole, and Saturn with its third ray monad. So there's a real connection between Libra, third ray, Saturn, third ray, and higher mind, third ray beyond the egoic Lotus itself, a part of the spiritual triad. So many connections. If we associate the three synthesizing planets with the three sacrifice petals, then Saturn, the major ruler of Libra, will be connected with the seventh petal. Remember, we saw that there was here a double Libra, right? There was a double Libra. Starting with Aries clockwise or counterclockwise, we get Libra for the seventh petal. Saturn is also a third-ray planet, representing the use of gathered resources on behalf of the divine plan, a very practical planet. So Saturn here is at once a planet of gain or accumulation, and definitely a planet of utilization, of utilitarianism. It's a practical planet, and the practical side of the third ray is also involved with Saturn, the intelligence in matter. Mercury as well. Mercury and Saturn have a close connection also in the whole initiation process and for the study of discipleship earlier on than the fourth degree. Okay, so since the first petal is the knowledge petal, this first petal, the knowledge petal in the sacrifice here, is a mental petal. The third ray will naturally be important, and we can see how, you know, if we really want to assign the three synthesizing planets to each of the tiers, it will go Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, where a certain, it could also go the other way, of course, but Saturn, Neptune, Uranus is reasonable, and Uranus is where you meet the one initiator. I forgot to say that, you know, the Aries part of it. For the ninth petal, in Aries, the hierarchical ruler, which applies at the third degree, is Uranus, who is the initiator, the Hierophant. It really fits in that respect to begin with Sagittarius and end with Aries when dealing with the sacrifice tier, especially since Aries is a great sign of sacrifice and is related to that saying, except the seed falleth in the ground and bring forth fruit. and the lamb slain from the foundations of the world, the sacrificial lamb. So sacrifice, sacrifice. Aries fits there very well, and it rather fits with the apparent reversing process by which the sacrificed here appears to be moving sequentially in a different direction, a counterclockwise direction, compared to the knowledge and love tiers. Well, these are speculations, and they seek confirmation, but there is some, there is some reasoning connected with it. Okay, so Saturn is also a planet which through which the first ray expresses, as in the triangle Leo, Saturn, Shambhala. This is that wonderful triangle, Leo, Pisces, Capricorn. And Saturn, interestingly enough, in this case, is associated with Leo, and Mercury with Capricorn, connecting to the third ray and humanity. I've expanded upon this quite a bit when working in the Esoteric Astrology book. So we are dealing with the first initiation, and the first ray of commencement is naturally important, and there's Leo as well. The sign particularly found in the horoscope of first-degree initiates, but not exclusively, because, you know, it can apply to any degree, but when a person is detected as being around the area of the first degree, we could expect Leo. As present in the horoscope, DK tells us it's taken in that sign or under that sign. I'm just, amazed at the network of interrelations. I think I see more now than I saw when I was putting this together, and thus it will go. The realization of significant connections will only increase until all the things to be connected become as one. A significant transformation begins with initiation. Transformation, that's the Uranus part, of course. For all the initiations, Uranus is important, but especially for the first and third initiations, I think more than for the second, on the hard line. Although Uranus does have that second ray association with the Pisces line, which is very remarkable, considering its usual expression. So Uranus is the esoteric ruler of Libra, and we're talking about the first initiation, and we're talking about the sacral center which Uranus rules, right? So Uranus is expressive of the seventh ray, which is prominent at the first degree, because the etheric body must at that time demonstrate considerable control over the physical elemental. It's sort of a Uranus over Saturn thing. And Uranus is the ruler of the sacral center, which must be transformed at the first initiation and lifted to the throat, where the seventh ray of Uranus again prevails. So you can take a look there, confirm some of this. One of the pages to do so, Esoteric Astrology, page 517. So we're looking at planets and why they would be important at certain petals. Uranus is also a planet of increasing knowledge and of abstract knowledge. It has a lot to do with the cosmic ethers into which one is beginning to penetrate. Well, the lowest part of the spiritual triad is not yet in the cosmic ethers. It's on the highest sub-level of the mental plane. But Uranus rules all the cosmic ethers, and once you've begun to work with the spiritual triad, you're essentially working in the realm of something that is strongly influenced by the cosmic ethers. Mercury, in relation to the first sacrifice petal, suggests knowledge accumulated to be shared, and it's got a strong third ray component to it. Third ray is important for this petal. We cannot stop at the rays that DK outwardly, blatantly gave us for these planets. We have to look for other and subtle references. And there's no question that Mercury is connected with the third ray. There's a reference connecting it to the moon and the third ray, and, just reasoning reveals it. all the lore about Mercury and the difference between the Buddha and the Christ and Mercury and Venus. There's a strong parallel there. And the third ray and second ray are featured in this parallel. Vulcan represents the increasing control of the personality by the soul. And this begins in earnest at the first degree, and hence during the seventh petal process, we have to say, the physical disciplines. Physical disciplines are applied, and there is mastery of the physical body to a requisite degree. And Vulcan applied before the first initiation is one of the planets to bring this about, along with Saturn and Pluto. Pluto gets rid of a lot of things which we don't need. There's so much ejection which is necessary before changing kingdoms. Excuse me. And Saturn, the disciplinarian connected with the physical body, there's a lot of elimination and regularization and containment and restriction which has to go on before one can truly enter the fifth kingdom in the Hall of Wisdom. So Saturn is a great teacher here and will be operative. See, why is all this important? Well, you can more or less assess by the kind of experiences you are passing through, what petal is your cutting edge, where you're really working and not depending upon reflex unfoldment. Then you can look at your horoscope. Then you can look at the kinds of ways that signs and planets and rays promote the process through which you must be passing, that particular petal process. Then looking at your horoscope, you can have the hint as to how to use that horoscope in a more direct manner to achieve correctly and efficiently in the petal process upon which you are focused. That could be a whole branch of astrology. That's so interesting. You're working on this. Here's what you've got. How is what you've got usually related to what you have to do? And how can you use what you have to actually work on what you have to do? You may want to emphasize certain planets as you do that. If a person were working on the third petal process, emphasizing Uranus would be really, really important, because Uranus kind of resolves time and space and helps to end illusion and brings us into the realm of being. If they had Aries in their horoscope, they could possibly use that to detect the one. If they were working in the second petal and seeking the true nature of sacrifice, Scorpio and Pluto would be very important. Saturn again. We'll get to that. But it's just a question of looking at your horoscope and detecting what is your equipment. What is your task? Then how do I use my equipment precisely to fulfill this task? And remember, of course, you're probably working in three petals at the same time. It's like maybe like a bell-shaped curve. So I wonder, how many people actually take the time or the thought to look at each planet and say, okay, my task is, how do I use this planet? This is proactive astrology. It's not the astrology of what's going to happen to me. It's the astrology of these are the energies I have, what's the best way to use them. Anyway, from the ray perspective, we've already spoken of the third ray and the seventh ray, where we seek to, it's interesting that thought energizes the etheric body. And I've had the experience, I'm sure you have too, that certain types of high thoughts really have a kick to them and bring in a lot of energy to the etheric body. I can see how the highest and the lowest could meet here in that sense, and the seventh ray could be significant. The third ray, of course, a strong ray of mind and involved with knowledge and involved with the abstract mind, which certainly is, the abstract mind is feeding the seventh petal. Just the way Buddhi is feeding the eighth petal, and Atma is feeding the ninth petal. Even though Atma, in a sense, feeds all the sacrifice petals, Buddhi all the love petals, and higher mind all of the knowledge petals. When you look at the picture, the diagram of the masters, let's see if I can get this, Fellowship of Cosmic Fire, and I always want to come in here, and here we go. Well, I'll get to it somehow. Yes, notice the different masters are not just connected only to one other. There are all kinds of distinct lines of force coming to different masters differentially. Look at all these that the Manu has. Quite interesting. And also Master M has many connections, and this is Master Morya here, and there's some blue lines connected to the Christ, a European Master, and Master DK, a Master KH, of course, and strangely a red line connected to Master DK. And why are some of these blue, and why is this red? Of course, when Keith Bailey was doing these, he may have done this for his own purpose, because the original diagram has no colors. And most of the colors are, of course, very straightforward. You can see red, green, and blue, what the connection must be. Master Morya is connected to this entire line of first ray adepts, but there's something interesting connected with DK, and perhaps it's something about the first ray that DK has in his triadal nature. Anyway, many are the interconnections, and not always obvious, and thus it is with all the petals. They are fed from different sources, not always obvious. So we have to understand this mesh, this network, and the more we understand it, the complexity of real life will appear before us, and we will not take the concrete mind and make these hard and fast, immovable, rigid categories, non-inclusive categories. Okay. So the process of initiation signifies that the second ray is generically the ray of the soul, is beginning to dominate the ray of the personality, which is generically the third ray. So the second ray through Jupiter and Venus, which we've already related to this seventh petal, will be prominent at the petal, and increasingly so as the causal body gains in scope and brilliance. I oftentimes think that sacrifice is not just of the first ray, but is a combination of the first ray and the second ray. I find that to be the case. Love and will together tends to be that which offers the sacrifice. And of course, Libra has so much of the second ray in it as well, prominent Libra petal. Buddhi has entered the causal body strongly. Buddhi is beginning to enter the personality as soul love. So when this initiation process begins, Buddhi, or the second ray, the sixth principle or the second ray, is going to be present. Fourth plane is Buddhi. It is the expression of the sixth principle, which is love, wisdom, second ray. It's a real 2-4-6 meeting place, and Mercury, representing the mind as well, and pure reason and intuition, has its place on the Buddhic plane. But right now we're dealing with abstract knowledge. We're dealing with the ability to think in terms of the vision of the higher of the pairs of opposites, and even beyond. It's not simply soul knowledge. Something of the antikarana process is beginning here, and that will allow us to contact the impersonal mind of the spiritual triad, which is not about what we've done in the lower three worlds, or the accumulation of what we've done, as expressed through the causal body. It's more, it's higher. Because the first initiation is the first ray will be important in relation to it, at least in terms of preparation. So Vulcan and Pluto, we're told, they're both first-ray planets on one of their levels. They will be prominent in the preparation period preceding the first degree. So some work has to be done in the seventh petal preceding the first degree. There has to be organizational work done there and vitalization work done there. Who knows exactly when the rod of initiation can be applied by the Bodhisattva, but some previous work has to be done there, and Pluto and Vulcan will be part of that work, just as they are in part of the work of Petal 6, Vulcan being very related to Virgo, of course, the veiled esoteric ruler, veiled by the moon in Virgo. And as stated, Saturn has its first-ray component, and Uranus is a deeply first-ray planet. So because of the necessity of the first ray, all of these planets carrying the first ray will be required. Maybe not Mars so much here, because we're entering the realm of the abstract mind, and Mars is more the realm of the concrete mind. But Mars does get things going, and it can be presumed that fiery aspiration must be strong all the way through the initiatory process, so higher Mars still has its place. We're speaking in the language of energy. It's all here all the time, with different emphases at different times and different types of sensitivity to the ever-present energy for us, depending upon the time of our evolutionary process, which is the present moment. It's difficult to know where one stands and what one must do, but that's the whole thing. Know who you are and know what you must do, and not only what you must do in the far distant future, but the very next moment. Know what you must do. Sixth-ray aspiration will naturally continue, building towards the second degree. So between the first and second degree, a lot of sixth-ray is found. It's only then that the astral body is tamed to a degree at the second degree, and still fiery aspiration continues. Master Morya is telling everybody to strive fierily. And since Aries is his sign, Mars has a lot to do with who he is. But then, of course, also Mercury, interestingly, for all those books he's given, to and through Helena Roerich, and Uranus, of course. The sixth-ray aspiration continues, even after the second degree. And there are those, I'm trying to think, we cannot say that the astral body necessarily changes to the second ray at the second initiation. I think it is not safe to say that. There are higher examples of the sixth ray, and we can have a sixth ray astral body which still can strive fierily. Maybe between the third and the fourth degree, the astral body, though long since subdued, could be utilized on the sixth ray. Anyway, we don't have, Alice Bailey had a second ray astral body, but we can see as she was recapitulating some of her initiations in the early days as a fiery preacher, she must have had the sixth ray. astral body. Did it change after her third initiation, which we can, I think, presume took place in her last incarnation? It is a presumption, of course. The record can be set straight by those who definitely know this. Initiation is taken through the power of the fifth ray and Venus. We're told how much the fifth ray is related to initiation, and Venus, well, the Christ is Neptune and the Christ is Venus, and he is the first initiator, and when the one initiator comes into the picture, that initiation is ruled by the fifth ray, and Venus is rising so strongly in Capricorn, where it's the hierarchical ruler. So at the real initiation process, Venus is tremendously important, and the one initiator is the Lord of Venusian love, and Venus is extremely connected with his nature. So Venus and initiation are inseparable, just the way Sirius and initiation are inseparable. Sirius sponsors the entire initiatory regime under which we function. Venus is like a little Sirius, you know. Maybe when what Venus is now becomes a star, it will be like Sirius. So initiation is taken through the power of the fifth ray and Venus, and so the light of the fifth ray, coming in through Venus, ruler of Libra, has much to do with the growth of the fifth petal. And really, you know, higher mind is ruled by Venus. The higher three planes of the mental plane are Venusian. The lower four are, in a certain sense, Martian. And Mercury can be applied on either side. So Venus is found in every initiatory process, introducing the light of the soul through knowledge, spiritual knowledge at the first degree, and taming the astral body at the second, and bringing true illumination of the mind at the third, and releasing the solar angels at the fourth degree and substituting something else for their departure. Can it be related to with its fifth ray to the fifth degree? What are we becoming in terms of Venus at the fifth degree? Well, that's another subject. Venus is like a little sun in which the greater luminary stores its rays. Some quotation to that effect has been offered. The seventh petal is not so much one in which the fourth ray will be prominent, except for the general processes of conflict and the attempt to harmonize that conflict, which is the lot of all disciples. Well, there's the mercurial connection, of course, between higher knowledge and lower knowledge, and that will bring in the fourth ray. The Mercurian connection connection brings in the fourth ray. The connection between higher and lower knowledge, and the attempt to apply higher knowledge in the more concrete contexts. The fourth ray is interesting because it's involved with the probationary path. Well, maybe some work in the seventh petal area is done on the probationary path. If even the first initiation still makes of a disciple a probationary disciple, that's one way of looking at it. So the fourth and the sixth ray are both involved on the path of probation. The third and the fifth ray more on the path of discipleship, but as one of my colleagues says, maybe that's more the path of accepted discipleship. And of course, Mercury and Saturn, well, Mercury and Saturn are planets of discipleship, most definitely, but they are planets more of accepted discipleship, I suppose. And then later of the fourth initiation. So how much is the fourth ray involved here? Well, one is beginning to develop a mental perspective, but there are still many struggles involved in the period between the first and the second initiation. So I suppose between the first initiation and second initiation, there are many struggles, and this can be this can indicate the importance of Ray 4 in this petal. And I'm not sure whether have I done the maybe I haven't. I think I should have mentioned Scorpio in connection with this, because Scorpio is present at all the first three initiations, and I don't think that I had that so much in my mind when I was doing this. So Scorpio, with its fourth ray, will be found here as well, indicating the first initiation. The testing power of Scorpio is involved in the first, second, and third initiations, even though Scorpio is mostly known for its connection with the second initiation. So in that way, maybe I have to take back what I said. The seventh petal is not so much one in which the fourth ray will be prominent, with the exceptions listed below. More pondering reveals more. From the chakric perspective, both the sacral and throat centers are strongly involved. The goal of the first initiation is the transfer of the sacral energy to the throat. Well, this is a very strongly throat center petal. Both of these centers have a correlation to both the seventh and the third rays, and both are prominent in the seventh petal processes. I cannot say the sacral center will be so prominent except as a source of energy. The sacral center becomes prominent as a source of energy to the throat center, which is definitely implicated at the seventh petal. We wondered, how much the throat center would be found active at the third petal. Well, it is. Mercury is strong there, but it maybe is more the mental elemental of the sacral center. But now we're dealing with a higher type of mind, almost getting into triadal minds. So the throat center, with its emphasis upon the third ray, and also the seventh ray at the first initiation, will be definitely involved here. The heart center also, from the chakra point of view, is especially stimulated during the unfoldment of the seventh petal, because we have the birth of the Christ within the heart. So naturally, both at this first initiation, well, really at all of them, but especially at the fourth, and I say the first, and maybe the heart of the sun initiation, which is the second. Well, we have the heart all the way through, don't we? We'll find a way for the heart chakra in all of these, although it might give way to the heart within the head in some of the still higher initiations, maybe a monadic initiation. A major question arises here. Must the seventh petal be completely unfolded before the first initiation occurs? Or does the unfolding of that petal suggest the period between the first and second initiation? The way I've worked it out, I don't know what I'm going to say ahead, but I would say no. Not completely unfolded. So if we work backwards, we realize that the completely unfolded ninth petal represents the completion of the third initiation. Thus, the completely unfolded eighth petal would represent the completion of the second. And if we work analogically, then the completely unfolded seventh petal would indicate the completion of the first initiation. This is possible but not ascertained. And that is, the more I think about this, the more I see that the seventh, that petal 7 and petal 8 continue to unfold to completion after the application of the rod. And only when the rod of initiation is applied to the 9th petal, signifying completion of the 9, are petal 7 and petal 8 completely unfolded. Because we are, I think, working in 3 petals always simultaneously. At least this is my present hypothesis. It's as if, and I've dealt with this before, with every tier there is a degree of unfoldment of each petal. But that final unfoldment to fullness is occurring when the very last petal in the tier is completely unfolded. Then the other 2 will gain whatever unfoldment they have remaining and fulfill that, and maybe not before. This seemed to be the case in relation to the first tier. In relation to the second tier, well, we have the full unfoldment, it seems, of the 5th petal at the first initiation, and some degree of unfoldment of the 6th petal. But at the second initiation, it seems the 6th petal is completely unfolded, and then perhaps the other 2 have already been completely unfolded. So maybe this does not hold up completely. My impression is, however, that we don't necessarily have to have the completion of the 7th and 8th petal at each one of those initiations. It seems that the application of the rod assists the unfolding, and that following the initiation there will be plenty of work to do between the first and second initiation, and that more work needs to be done in the 7th petal while work is being done in the 8th, so that the period between the first and second initiation is not only work in the 8th petal, because even the 6th petal will be involved. So it's not conceivable that the unfoldment of the 6th petal, which will not be complete until the second initiation is complete, and thus still requiring some degree of work, would be a factor in the process, and no more work being done in the 7th petal, because it's completely unfolded. It doesn't make sense. So I'm looking at the 3-petal process and thinking that after the first initiation, the 7th petal will not be completely unfolded, but will be unfolded to a high degree, and that the continuing work, the abnormal, strenuous abnormal work of the disciple, will continue to contribute to its unfoldment. And that when the rod of initiation is applied to the 8th, it will become further unfolded. The 7th will become further unfolded, and then when it's applied to the 9th, completely unfolded. This is my present hypothesis, having read and attempted to correlate many things, and finding what appear to be at times inconsistent references, which make me realize, of course, that I am missing something. From all this, I gather what has been said. Now, going back to these interpolations here, it infers the full unfoldment of 5 of the egoic petals, leaving 4 to open before the final initiation. That's so interesting because at the first degree, 5, full unfoldment. So that's pretty clear and seems to be a somewhat different method. Let's see here. And that's a very important reference. And then the final opening is effected during a period of treading the stages of the path of initiation, and in this round it is hastened by the rites of initiation and by the strenuous and abnormal efforts of the man himself. That is such an important statement. By the time the third initiation is taken, the inner circular petal is opened and the 9 petals are completely unfolded. So anyway, for the moment, I will say that I am not expecting, when I look at how things are done with the application of the rod, I am not expecting the complete unfoldment of petals 7 at the third initiation, at the first initiation, and petal 8 at the second. I'm expecting that, and here's why. Let's see. I'll come down to the place where I was. All I have to do is find it. Okay. I should have looked at that before I went. I will say this, that here's my reasoning. Since petal 5 is completely unfolded at the first, and petal 6 cannot be completely unfolded until the second initiation, then it makes no sense to think that petal 7 is completely unfolded at the first initiation, because the petal behind it, petal 6, is not yet completely unfolded. And, in other words, what you would have like petal 7 completely unfolded along with petal 5. It doesn't make sense if you leave petal 6 in a state of incomplete unfoldment. And then we can also apply that same idea to the second initiation. We have, let us say, the idea that petal 7 is not completely unfolded. So then at the second initiation, petal 8 would be completely unfolded and petal 6 together, while petal 7 was not yet completely unfolded. It's a little different. But again, it doesn't make sense to look for the complete unfoldment of 2 petals, which are separated by another petal, occurring at the same time. It's a technical matter, I suppose, and one that it would be nice to know. And, it's a little bit vague, but I'm suspecting that, what does it say? 4 more petals remain to be unfolded from the time of the first initiation. And right there, well, there's the hint. Okay, there's the important hint. Now, 653, and now I have to go back. I'm on one of my searches. Forgive me. Okay, so here it is. Leaving 4 to open before the final initiation. Here is the hint. This is it. The first initiation has been taken. The flashing forth of the 5-pointed star initiation. So, we go down to 653 or so. This time I know my way back. and I'll say, look here. Okay. Now, here we have, okay, got to make this work, huh? Here we have the first initiation having been taken. All right. First initiation is taken, but 4 petals remain to be unfolded. They are not yet. So the petal 7 is among them, and so it is not yet at the first initiation completely unfolded. There's the confirmation. And I think we can go on and say the same, you know, of petal 8. The analogy is there, I think, that at the second initiation there is still more work to do. I suspect that for the second initiation, or so let's say for petal 8, there is work to be done, in the wilderness between the second and the third initiation. And this work in the wilderness will contribute to the further unfoldment of petal 8, along with the necessary work in petal 9 and the application of the rod of initiation, rod of initiation to petal 9 will be that which is needed to guarantee the full opening of petal 8. Now, the application of the rod of initiation does indicate the full third initiation. In St. Paul's life, it seemed to go on for a while. The question can be, when was the rod applied? Maybe the beginning of the process was somewhere along the road to Damascus, and then DK talks about the, how does he describe it, writing the letters to the Hebrews when he was reaching out towards the light, but maybe the rod is not fully applied yet at that point. It seems to me we have a consummation, and that the rod of initiation, the initiate is initiated before he is initiated. So in this particular case, it might be that since the full opening of the 9 indicates the third initiation, that has to be pretty well achieved, and then the rod of power confirms. It's a little complicated, isn't it? So the rod of initiation is the confirmation of the full opening of the 9, because the initiate is initiate before he is initiated. At least that's one way to look at it. There's a bit of a difference there in the 9th petal, because there is a climax and the Lord of the world comes into the picture and sort of presides over the completion of the 9. Okay, and we have that climaxing moment that is occurring at the end of the whole process. So it is a little different from what occurs earlier, which are initiations of the threshold. But anyway, I'm glad to have confirmed this. The first initiation concerning what the first initiation infers the full unfoldment of 5 of the egoic petals, leaving 4 to open before the final initiation. Therefore, they are not yet open, even though the rod of power is applied to the 7th petal. At least we can confirm that in relation to the 7th petal, and since it seems reasonable to say that it is so in relation to the 8th, and the final consummation is of a different order, literally of a different order, and the rod of power is applied. Here's our question, of course. The real question here, does the application, yes, well, I think I've answered my question, of the rod of power occur after all 9 petals are fully open, or does it cause the final opening? And now I will say that based on the idea, based on the thought that the 9th petal cannot be fully opened before the 7th petal and the 8th petal are, petal are, I would say that the application of the rod of initiation completes the opening process and is not, completes the final opening process and is not based upon it. Of course, sight is what is needed. Direct, accurate sight of the process. But right now, one uses the reasoning, the references to say how it must be. People will often say, well, you're only reasoning and using references, and I see it. But, allow my mistrust. So much of what is seen is related to a reflection on the astral plane and is related to wishful thinking and is not confirmed and contradicts often what the Master says. So maybe in my third-ray manner I will stick with the reasoning as the builder of the foundation of pure and accurate sight. Okay, I hope that this little digression has not been terribly frustrating, but at least I think the rod of initiation is the confirmation of the full opening of the 9, because the initiate is initiate before it's initiated, but this is probably not the case. The way it probably is given below, with the rod of initiation causing the final opening of the entire tier. Now we go back again, let's see, we're on 659, and we go back to this, to the big print. Maybe I can locate it by the big print. Yes. By the time the 3rd initiation is reached, the 9 petals are fully unfolded. Well, it doesn't really tell us, does it, whether the application of the rod. But look, let's just say that since we know, here we are. Okay. Here we are. Okay. Put it right here. Since we know that the application of the rod of initiation at petal 7 and petal 8 causes further opening or unfoldment, why should we not hypothesize that the same is true of the rod of initiation applied to petal 9? So it's pretty much, you know, like the finishing touches are given by the rod of initiation. Some unfoldment has occurred before due to the strenuous effort, strenuous and abnormal effort of the man, and the application, well, in other words, it's due to that. The application, how about spelling, of the rod of initiation adds to the unfoldment. It's not conceivable to me, at least, that the application of the rod would not facilitate unfoldment. So there are some final adjustments to be made between these tiers of petals, as we've learned, in order for them to begin to rotate and so forth. And it seems that the finality, the rod of initiation at the 9th petal, gives us finality. Hypothesizing that the rod of initiation applied at the 9th petal gives us finality, finality with respect to the 9 petals. Right. At least that is my hypothesis of the moment. Of course, you know, until one can see these things working out in all clarity, then it has to be a hypothesis. But, you know, assembling the references, this is what I come up with at this time. And, of course, you know, arguments will occur, or heated discussions will occur in the future on what exactly happens here, but we do have the Tibetan's final word on it, that by the time the 3rd initiation occurs, all 9 are open. Completely open. And at the 1st initiation, 5 are fully opened, and 4 remain to be open. So at least at the 1st initiation, the 7th cannot be fully open. No, it cannot be. And I continue that idea by saying that at the 2nd initiation, the 8th cannot be fully open. Maybe the 7th is almost open, but still has a little way to go. You know, the rod of initiation applies by the Great Lord, the ROI applied by SK puts the finishing touches on the sacrifice petal process, and for that matter on the process seeing to the opening of the entire 9. Well, you know, if nothing else, friends, I've gotten something more out of this more diligent research into these matters. I thought I was being fairly diligent 7 years ago when I was writing in Cosmic Fire, making commentaries on Cosmic Fire, but I now see that some things may have escaped me, and that is the value of continued study and never thinking in these speculative matters that you necessarily know it all, because we don't. So, using inference then, after all this, we would understand excuse me, the unfolding 7th petal to indicate a process of preparation for the 1st initiation. And this is a general term. The unfolding, you know, let's just say organizing, vitalizing, etc. But definitely, let's just say, when the rod of power is applied, when the is applied, there must be unfoldment to some extent. Unfoldment to some extent. And I will put here the word. Okay. We are told of the seventh petal that its unfoldment marks the beginning, the period wherein the man consciously utilizes all that he has gained or is gaining under the law. That's Saturn, that's Libra, for the definite benefit of humanity and that service. This does not mean that it's well, stimulation represents this conscious utilization, nor does its organization. I guess you have to acquire something first. So I'm going to say organization here, because that is the word that really precedes, and then vitalization. But only its unfoldment. Well, perhaps. It seems to be the case that the first initiation takes place sometime during some degree of unfoldment of the seventh petal. During some degree of unfoldment, because due to of the seventh petal, due in part to the strenuous and abnormal effort, and not during the earlier phases of stimulation, vivification, organization, etc. All right, these are technical matters, and one day we will see. It's just that there is a certain point. This is the important takeaway. There is a certain point in the seventh petal process at which the rod of power can be applied by the bodhisattva, and not before. And what is that? What has happened? Has only organization and vitalization occurred, or has some degree of unfoldment occurred due to the man's efforts when the rod of initiation can be applied? Okay, and let's see, if we look again at Cosmic Fire, page 543, there is that quite disturbing little reference. But let's just see if what that seems to be saying. The man, in terms of human endeavor, has achieved his goal. He has passed through the three halls, and in each has transferred that which he has gained therein to the content of his consciousness. He has, in ordered sequence, developed and opened the petals of the lotus, first opening the lower three. Well, this is interesting. Ordered sequence, of course. So much depends here. Are we talking one by one by one? To a certain extent, I think that's true, and then the entire tier, with differential opening of the different petals. So he has, in ordered sequence, opened the petals of the lotus, first opening the lower three, which involves a process covering a vast period of time. Then the second period, series of petals are opened during a period of time covering his participation intelligently in world affairs until the spiritual kingdom at the first initiation, and the final and briefer period when the higher three or inner ring of petals are developed and opened, and we don't really have the words fully opened here in any case. So if we're looking for the ultimate stage of full opening, we may have to be more technical. Okay, let's see. 543. Yeah, this is an important page for us to go over, and I think we're coming up to it soon. All right. Yes, his intelligent participation in world affairs. Okay, opening will occur. But the final opening, this is not to say, of course, that the first and second degree initiate do not participate intelligently in world affairs. But a final and, I would say, much briefer period, wherein the three higher or inner ring of petals are developed and opened. Maybe, well, it might not be a period as short as the period between the first and the fourth initiation, because some development in terms of organization and vitalization may be occurring before the first initiation, some development in that higher ring of petals, the sacrifice tier. All right, a little necessary diversion. If the second, so let's see if I agree with what I wrote before. If the second petal of the sacrifice tier achieves complete unfoldment only once the second initiation is taken, and I want to add that this may not be entirely true, then the stimulation organization, I always reverse those words. It's organization and then vitalization. Organization, vitalization, and unfoldment of the second petal must take a much longer time than the same process in relation to the third petal, because we're dealing with the period of time between the first and second initiation. So the third petal can complete its unfoldment in one life, as the second and third initiations are commonly taken in the same life. But the first and second initiations are not taken in the same life, and usually quite a number of lives separate them. So basically what I'm saying is that getting the right bracket here, I'm saying that the the unfoldment of the of petal 9 will be much more rapid than the unfoldment through strenuous and abnormal effort of petal 8, and even the completion of petal 7. So a lot of time is being spent there in the unfoldment of petal 7. After the rod has been applied, there's still some work to do, I think, and in terms of gaining knowledge and sharing it, and the sacrificial work of petal 8. It's petal 8 is, as I begin to see it, in petal 8, so much lengthy work has to be done, as sacrifice is hard to do. So learning the true meaning of sacrifice takes a long time, and it is this which is the theme, or let's see, is a major theme between the first initiation and the second initiation, at which time one enters the stream. Now, even greater sacrifice than at the second initiation is done in the desert, confronting the world, the flesh, and the devil. And this is still eighth petal work. requiring strenuous and abnormal effort. But the rod of initiation adds something to unfoldment which the man cannot contribute, and thus, in a way, finishes things off. I hope that's becoming clear, that this eighth petal of sacrifice, the really big and final sacrifice of all that man might want in the astral body, is accomplished when one gives up the world, gives up the flesh, and gives up the devil, pride, in the desert between the second and third initiation. And this will require, of course, concomitant work in the ninth petal, because after all, these two can be taken together, or in the next life, but oftentimes together. So naturally, work in the ninth petal is required, preparing. Let's just say that the rod of initiation does not come along and do all the work for the man in the ninth petal. No, he has to work there very hard. And he's doing this. Let's just, things are coming to me here. He is doing this work in the ninth petal while he is fighting with the world, the flesh, and the devil. Some are not succeeding, and if they don't succeed, they, in a way, become their own dweller, and they can head off into the left-hand path. So even, that's amazing that even while working in petal 9, it is possible to veer off. Oh, how do you spell that? Well, how do you spell veer? Let's see. Veer, two E's. To veer off onto the left-hand path. That's amazing. So even while doing that kind of work, which should lead to the utter sacrifice of all forever, even while trying to understand the will associated with the ninth petal, one can fail at this intermediate place where love of the world, love of the flesh, and love of one's own unsubdued ahamkara can prevail, and victory not be achieved. So it is clear, considering the principle of overlapping and development, that when the first petal achieves complete unfoldment, as is completely open, well, I might have to change some thoughts here. And of course, this is humbling, but it's better the truth than to stick by something that may not be entirely true. So it seemed clear at the moment, anyway, that there is this principle of overlapping, that when the first petal achieves, I'm going to change this, a reasonable, I see what has happened. Achieves, right, I'll be right there, and sorry for the delay. Achieves a reasonable degree, a fairly full unfoldment, and is heading towards opening, the second petal is already organized, vitalized, and perhaps in the process of some degree of unfoldment. When the second petal achieves, and I'm going to change this again, a fairly full unfoldment and is heading towards opening, then the third petal of the sacrificed tear is already stimulated or is already organized, vitalized, and probably in the process of unfoldment through, you guessed it, strenuous and abnormal labor and abnormal effort. So actually, you know, I'm making my assessment of this a little bit more subtle based on the sort of three-petal theory and based on the thought that when important work is going on in petals ahead, it doesn't necessarily mean that the petals behind will be completely unfolded, especially when dealing with the sacrifice tier. I used to love to take the book Cosmic Fire and meet a friend and just lock up for about 2 days and do nothing but pore over Cosmic Fire and try to solve the difficult problems presented. It used to be my idea of heaven, disappearing with a treatise on cosmic fire. But I see it's a humbling experience to realize that there's always more to learn and that some of your best assessments maybe at a certain time may not be fully correct. So anyway, I'm expecting, for instance, that when petal 5 is fully unfolded, some unfoldment exists in petal, a reasonable degree of unfoldment exists in petal 6 and even in petal 7 due to abnormal and strenuous effort. That when petal 6 is fully unfolded, there will be continued unfoldment in petal 7 and some degree of unfoldment in petal 8 through strenuous and abnormal effort before, just as the rod of initiation is applied. So that I am saying that some degree of unfoldment precedes the application of the rod of initiation, which grants further, though not necessarily complete, unfoldment. As in petal 8, wherein I said, look, you're out there in the desert. Scorpions run around in the desert, don't they? When you live in Arizona, you have to be careful about walking barefoot, you know, because they're running around in your house. So even in petal 8, you're out there in the desert. And being out there in the desert follows the second initiation, meaning there's more work to be done in petal 8 through your own continued strenuous and abnormal effort, aided by the power of the rod that's been behind you, which has seen to the complete unfoldment of the 6th petal, and the almost complete unfoldment of the 7th, but not the complete unfoldment of the 8th, because there's more work to be done in that 8th petal after the rod is applied. You on your own have to make a choice, and only when you've made the proper choice can the third initiation be taken. Very short time between the desert and your transfiguration, probably in the life of Christ, not a long time at all. You're in the desert, and then later the transfiguration occurs, but not much later. So you make that choice properly, and you put down the world of flesh and the devil, then more unfoldment is occurring in petal 8, and only the rod in petal 9 gives the finishing touches to petal 8 and to petal 7, and gives the final opening for petal 9. It's a very great gift in a way, is it not, from the Lord of the world. So it's hard to match exactly the degree of unfoldment to the moment of initiation, Working backwards, however, it seems that the third degree marks the point of full unfoldment of the sacrifice tier. Thus, we would not expect that the first initiation would be taken when the seventh petal is only beginning to be opened, and yet, you see, this has been my conflict. I would say now, I would say that a certain degree of unfoldment has occurred in the in petal 7 due to strenuous. You know what, I'm going to make an abbreviation: strenuous and abnormal effort. All right, it's time for an abbreviation: strenuous and abnormal effort. Whoops, but let's do it right. Strenuous and abnormal effort. You have to copy these things exactly in the right case, otherwise you're in trouble. Yeah, okay, I think that'll do it, because I like that phrase, and it kind of tells what the man has to do. That some degree of unfoldment has occurred in petal 7 due to strenuous and abnormal effort, and only then the rod of initiation can be applied. So obviously I was wrestling with this at the time, and I think I'm coming closer, and I hope that you are coming closer to understanding this, and if some aspects of understanding are still escaping us, then maybe they will occur to you, and you can let me know what you think, if I'm still alive by the time anybody is reading this or listening to it. Yet I say the picture is not clear, and the main problem is this one: does initiation occur following the organization of the petal and before the process of unfoldment is fully matured? And I would say, now okay, excuse me. Now I say yes. Or does initiation occur only once the petal which corresponds to that initiation is completely unfolded? And this would be the corollary to the initiate is initiate before he is initiated. Okay. All right, that would be the corollary. From the following statement, one could think that initiation occurs when the petal is organized and about to unfold. And let's see if this is confirmation. In this fashion, the work of the disciple is carried forward, and his testing and training carried out until 2 circles of petals are unfolded and the third is organized. He is brought through right direction of energy and wise manipulation of force currents to the portal of initiation, and graduates out of the hall of learning into the great hall of wisdom, the hall wherein he gradually becomes aware of forces and powers latent in his own ego and egoic group. So his testing and training is carried out until 2 circles of petals are unfolded, and here I have to ask again, does this mean completely unfolded? Because there's lots of organizational work going on in the third tier of petals, and yet the rod of initiation has not been applied yet. So following the organization, the rod of initiation is applied, and I would say due to strenuous and abnormal effort, the rod of initiation is applied. Without that strenuous and abnormal effort, I do not see how the rod of initiation could be rightly applied. So let's see what I say about this. In this case, the rod of initiation would stimulate the unfoldment and would not be the seal of certification that the petal has been unfolded. And now I say yes to this. When the third tier of is organized, in general, we might ask to what extent is the seventh petal in process of opening, and now I say, yes, a very important question, due to the strenuous and abnormal effort of the man working in the sacrifice tier. There it is, ST, sacrifice tier. The unfoldment of the third petal of the sacrifice tier is probably a very rapid affair, possibly occurring in part of one life cycle. Is the rod of initiation applied by the Lord of the world as the ninth petal is about to unfold, while it is unfolding? And, I'm glad I'm asking myself these questions. And now I say yes to option 2. I laid out the options here, or only after it is unfolded completely. Whichever is the correct answer, we have such references as the following to guide us. By the time the third initiation is reached, a wondrous transformation. This is the other one. We've used this before, but let's read it again. By the time the third initiation is reached, a wondrous transformation has transpired. The outer sphere is palpitating with every color in the rainbow and is of wide radius. The streams of electrical energy circulating in it are so powerful that they are escaping beyond the periphery of the circle. Resembling the rays of the sun, the 9 petals are fully unfolded. I always love to see that word fully, because it erases the ambiguity of unfolded, open, How much? How fully? We saw that there are no bud lotuses, strictly speaking, and that everybody has one petal open. But how far open? Fully open? Okay, so that's one, and we have talked about that. By the time the third initiation is taken, this is in another place, the inner circle of petals is opened, and the full-blown lotus in all its beauty can be seen. Full-blown, that sounds like the full thing, doesn't it? Okay. In all its beauty can be seen. At the fourth initiation, the inner bud bursts fully open. I put the word fully in there, even though there's some unfoldment of the synthesis petals with each initiation, through the effect of the electrical force of the rod, which brings the power of the synthetic ray of the solar system itself, and that is the great second ray. And the inner jewel is thus revealed, reminding us that we're not only dealing with the first ray phenomenon, but also with the second ray. Let's see. We have a little more to go. It is suggested that the inner circle of petals is opened. Are we speaking of the sacrifice here? It seems so. And are these petals fully open? From the reference on 763, again, so it seems. And the words full-blown lotus suggest so. Words full-blown lotus suggest full opening. One can wonder whether the rod of the Bodhisattva starts the unfoldment going for both the first and second initiation, or whether the rod of the one initiator confirms the resultant opening of the ninth petal and the third tier rather than inaugurating the opening. And we have answered this. We have answered this. And we have concluded that the rod of initiation adds something to the opening, and that the rod of the Bodhisattva also adds to the opening. Okay, and maybe does not start the opening because the opening of petal 7 and petal 8, because the abnormal and the strenuous and abnormal effort has contributed something to the opening already. Now, all of this has to be checked against direct observation of the facts on the higher mental plane. So, were this the case, the Bodhisattva would stimulate the opening of the first petal of the sacrifice tier, which would take a very long time, and would stimulate the opening of the second petal of the sacrifice tier, which would comparatively might not take long at all. Well, I'm changing my views here. The third petal of the sacrifice tier would already be vitalized, organized, and partially unfolded. Then perhaps the rod of the one initiator would be applied towards the end of the ninth petal's unfoldment. It is only with reference to the third initiation that we have a text confirming the complete unfoldment of the petal associated with it, and that's very important. So obviously, I have been wrestling with this problem and kind of, because of dealing with this issue, forcing you to wrestle with it as well. Does it have a practical application? Well, there is just very strenuous work to be done in petal number 8, and intense and shorter strenuous work to be done in petal number 9. The rod of the Bodhisattva would stimulate the opening of the first petal of the sacrifice tier, which would take a very long time, and in addition, the opening would have begun under the of the man, okay, strenuous and abnormal effort, and would stimulate the opening of the petal of the sacrifice tier, the second petal of the sacrifice tier, along, provided that some unfoldment had taken place through the strenuous and abnormal effort. Now I'm going to just check this question altogether, which might not take long at all. This we have to see. There is no final opening. I would say that, all right, now I want to speculate that much work will be done in petal 8 before the rod of initiation is applied. Then, let's see, stimulate the opening of, this is the question. Where is this work accomplished? Where does the majority of the work take place? Well, it's a very long time between the first initiation and the second initiation. When the rod of initiation is applied at the first initiation, there could be, let's say, 30 lives of continued work within the 8th petal, and some continued work within the 7th petal, though the main, there is the constant gathering of more knowledge to be shared, and the constant, for the 7th petal, and the constant work in the area of learning what sacrifice is, and to give without receiving in the 8th petal. So I think this opening of the 2nd petal of sacrifice, I have to cross this out, and I have to say that it could take a long time. Okay. So, in fact, this opening of the of petal 8 through strenuous and abnormal effort could take a long time because of the interval between the between the first initiation and the second initiation. How long does it take working in the 7th petal? Well, it can still take a long time before the first initiation becomes possible. I must add that it could still take a long time working in petal 7, petal 7, before the first initiation takes place. So in trying to come to some understanding of this, poring over and over it, I have modified my points of view. And I hesitate to leave this commentary on Makara in the way it is. I'd like to I'd like to make these rectifications, or perhaps have one of my colleagues who understands my way of thinking take these notes and make the rectifications. The 3rd petal of the sacrifice tier would already be organized, let's say, vitalized, and partially unfolded. And then perhaps the rod of the 1 initiator would be applied towards the end of the 9th petal's unfoldment, maybe towards the end. And it is only with reference to the 3rd initiation that we have the text confirming the complete unfoldment at a particular initiation. Let's say the rod of initiation always adds a plus to what man has been able to do himself. So how much of the unfoldment of the members of the sacrifice tier has occurred due to strenuous and abnormal effort, and how much due to the rod? So let's wait and see. I think, I would say quite a bit depends upon the candidate and his strenuous and abnormal effort. I'm so glad I chose that abbreviation. Importantly, we might also consider that the rod of initiation is applied when we might also consider, and this is the direction I'm tending, I've given so many options, so many possibilities, but this seems to be the direction I'm tending in, I believe, is applied when a given petal is open to a sufficient degree to provide some degree of mastery over the requirements associated with the petal, and then the application of the rod promotes further and rapid unfoldment until the petal is almost completely open, assuming that the final opening occurs at the 3rd degree. I think this pretty well expresses my present views, so let us keep this in mind as we examine some contrasting possibilities, and we have been examining them, so I'll try to make relatively short work of this. Okay, so we have somewhat contradictory references under consideration, and perhaps they can be reconciled by considering that there are 2 orders of initiation here. Certainly that is true. one of them supervised by the bodhisattva and the other by the one initiator, and that the intervals between the second and third and fourth, and the fourth and fifth are much shorter than that between the first and second. Perhaps the third, fourth, and fifth initiations administered by Sanat Kumara function according to other rules. We're not so interested here in the fifth initiation, though we know the fourth and fifth can be taken in the same life, the third and fourth in the same life, the second, third, and fourth in the same life. It's almost like the second and fifth can be taken in the same life. And I have to ask a strange question. Did Milarepa take the second initiation, third initiation, fourth initiation, and fifth initiation in the same life? After I read about his life, such was his amazing accomplishment. Was it by Evans Wentz, this book about the great Tibetan saint Milarepa? I'm trying to think about the name of the book, but anyway, I just kind of put the book down and said, oh, what can be done? Because, the heroic effort of such a soul as Milarepa must have had tremendous first ray, cannot be duplicated. How can we come close to being able to do that? And yet we cannot forget that essentially the initiate is the initiate before he is initiated, and therefore, let's see if I get this right so I can go up and down. Initiation is confirmation. But I want to say, but maybe a confirmation not of all that the rod of initiation can do, but of a sufficient part of what the rod of initiation can, a sufficient part of the initiation waiting for the rod of initiation to put the final touches and the completed expansion upon the pre-done work and unfoldment. Yet, as a balancing thought, initiation is also commencement. Or, as we have suggested, maybe there is a middle road in this consideration, with the rod of power being applied well after unfoldment has commenced, but somewhat before it is completed. Well, I really like myself here for having tried to find the way out of the thicket of these options, and having expressed it reasonably, at least. In this case, initiation would not only be confirmation, but a gift, a bestowal, and addition, rapidly stimulating unfoldment until unfoldment is complete, or in the case of petal 7 and petal 8, nearly complete. For petal 9, complete entirely. So we are probably dealing with the fact that the exact moment the rod of initiation can be applied is a highly technical and secret matter. The inner assessment of the readiness of the candidate is essential, and we don't know those things. The degree of petal unfoldment may not be exactly the same for each candidate, as other factors of timing, astrological for instance, may have to be considered. Okay, I was hoping that I did not leave myself in the terrible quandary which seemed to arise in the earlier part of this speculation, but then I had to re-reason the whole thing, only to discover that I had thought about it before, but maybe not with as sufficient detail as has appeared in this reasoning through. However, let us summarize the pertinent questions in the line of speculation we've been following. Could it make sense that the Bodhisattva gives, through the first and second initiation, the impulse towards unfoldment, whereas the Lord of the world, in relation to the third, fourth, and fifth initiation, sets the seal of confirmation? All right, that's another question. Certainly in the ninth petal, there's a lot of work done, but let's just say that even in the ninth petal, there is some unfoldment after the rod of initiation is applied. It is not from this present hypothesis the seal of completed work. So what's obvious here is the matter is not easy to solve. That must be very clear. If the first initiation comes only when the unfoldment of the seventh petal is complete, and we've already showed that this cannot be, we have found the reference. We have found the reference to show that this cannot be. If the second initiation comes only when the unfoldment of the eighth petal is complete, and we have shown that there is still further Scorpio work to be done in the desert after the second initiation, then the unfoldment of the eighth petal will take a very long time, for there is a long interval between the first and second initiations. Well, it will take a long time, and but maybe not longer than the seventh petal, because there's some seventh petal work being done before the first initiation takes place. So the eighth petal unfoldment will take a long time, but some of that unfoldment may be the responsibility of the man through strenuous and abnormal effort. My favorite abbreviation at this time. If the first and second initiations are given before, these are different alternatives, before the first and second petals are completely unfolded, and perhaps when they are organized and about to unfold, or somewhat unfolded, that's what I seem to be covering all the options there, then it will be the unfoldment of the seventh petal, which takes a very long time when compared to the unfoldment of the eighth and ninth petal, but not in relation to the unfoldment of petals earlier than the seventh. Well, I can see now the seventh petal taking a long time, because there is plenty of work to be done before the first initiation is taken. See, there is plenty of work to be done before the first initiation is taken, and some degree of unfoldment may be possible, as the candidate for the first initiation has already begun his strenuous and abnormal effort. So this latter solution seems most appealing to the intuition, even though some references might seem to contradict the reality, the possibility of this. I am thinking, though, that the eighth petal unfoldment does take a very long time, and that the seventh petal unfoldment can take a period of time, a long time, because we don't know how many lives are required as one moves towards the first initiation. How many lives are required? Let's see, RQD, as a man moves towards the first initiation. So if many, then there is much pre-initiatory work being done in the seventh petal before the rod is applied? Well, nothing but looking at sample cases over many lives will solve this problem. And you know, this is what the solar angels themselves can do, because they have to be experts in these matters. Probably each initiation has a number of steps in it, and these steps correspond with the various stages of the unfoldment of a given petal. And that makes sense. Each initiation has a number of, let's call these preparatory steps in it, and these steps correspond to the various stages of the unfoldment of a given petal. We are presented only with the most symbolic picture. First-hand, reliable, clairvoyant observation will be required to correlate the degree of petal unfoldment with the steps in the initiation process. Well, we can call these preparatory steps in the initiation process, and even in the initiatory process per se, as some such processes seem to span a long time. Well, look at the later initiations, for instance. Look at the Christ's seventh initiation, which was begun in Palestine 2,000 years ago, and will probably not be completed until towards the end of the Aquarian Age. It's different stages of it. It's kind of a, maybe there was a stage in it that related to the high point, the Gemini high point, the full moon of 1943. And, you know, we could ask, of course, if in some respect, when the, but I think I've settled that. I've asked that question of myself before, whether it's the eighth initiation that will be taken when the Lord of the world, when the Christ and the Buddha stand before the Lord of the world at a point later in the Aquarian Age. But I think I decided upon references that it was really the completion of the seventh initiation. So, you know, in over our heads here, certainly in over mine, but indicating at least what some of the issues are and what has to be worked out. We can summarize very generally by saying that the seventh, eighth, and ninth petals, i.e. the three petals of the sacrifice here, are associated with the first, second, and third initiations, respectively. Well, I began with that simple statement long ago. Let's say, I began with this simple statement at the beginning of this inquiry. At the same time, at some time in the unfoldment of these petals, either earlier or later, or upon almost complete or complete unfoldment, the rod of initiation is complied. Well, I guess I've given every option there. So every option has been given here, with the suggestion that well, let's just say that it's not necessarily almost with the suggestion that complete unfoldment, at least I can say that, is not required, because the rod of initiation must add something to the unfoldment. Otherwise, why apply it, except for confirmation? So, not the very earliest stages of work in the petal, and not the very latest. but at the appropriate moment when some unfoldment has occurred due to the strenuous and abnormal effort of the candidate. So unfoldment, we are told, takes place due to both of these. Unfoldment takes place due to both strenuous and abnormal effort and the application of the rod of initiation, and not just due to one or the other, both. So we know, since we know that strenuous and abnormal effort is going to take place before the rod of initiation is applied, and since strenuous and abnormal effort produces unfoldment, then there must be unfoldment before the rod of initiation is applied, and not just organization and vitalization. Whoa. Okay, I hope that that brings us to some kind of clarity. At least I'm getting clearer about it. So I would suggest that we continue to ponder the matter and see if the intuition can confirm the moment in the process of petal unfoldment when the rod of power is applied. And here I feel I have come closer, but nothing scientifically definite. Okay. Whew. Maybe that's the most strenuous and abnormal effort I've had to apply during this series of commentaries on the Egoic Lotus. But you know, you feel you get closer over time. And the bottom line is you have to do something before the rod of initiation is applied. So the candidate must do something to prepare for initiation before the boosting effect of the rod of initiation can play its part. Boosting opening, you know. Boosting / opening effect can play its part. Well, we have a little bit more to go here. A long program, I realize, but I've explained to you why I do these longer programs, just to preserve the momentum and to save time. I know it puts a bit more upon you to download big files, but you can stop them at any time, you know. And even if you close the program, you can open it and get back to it because you know the number of minutes that have expired. If you keep note of that, and that number of minutes is easily tracked at the bottom of Windows Media Player or other players. So continuing with chakra unfoldment, we would imagine the ajna center to continue developing from the first to the third degree, as we are told from page 170 of Cosmic Fire. At the third degree, it will be fully functioning, for that degree is ruled by the fifth ray, which expresses through the ajna center via Venus, fifth ray ajna center, and the ajna center is the chakra directly associated with the third degree. Fifth ray, third degree, ajna center, Venus. Those are the ideas to keep together at that point. If there are 5 of the 7 head centers functioning at the time of the first initiation, then these 4 will be correlated with the seventh petal process, leading to the first initiation, and then 5 will show us we have reached the first initiation. The unfoldment of all 7 head centers will be complete, or relatively complete, because the 4th initiation ruled by Vulcan, just as the 7 head centers are, looms ahead by the time the 3rd degree is taken. So the sentence is basically 7 centers will be complete by the time the 3rd degree is taken. Okay. And Vulcan, Vulcan is active before the 1st degree, no question about it. So some of the head centers are involved. Vulcan is active before the 1st degree because, well, it just is. And Vulcan rules the head centers which are involved in increasing measure between the 1st degree and the 3rd degree. In all occult processes, the highest head center is, to a degree, active. We've seen that when we look at the methods of service, the 10 C groups. The head center is involved in the chakras being used in all 10 C groups. We can expect the growth of the crown center stimulation as the initiatory process moves from the 1st through the 3rd initiations and beyond, even at the 5th, at the 6th, because even if you have a Maya Varupa, the crown center can demonstrate in increasing growth. We will not expect crown center stimulation to any significant extent before the 1st degree. It's ruled by Pluto then, and when Vulcan comes in with those 7 will centers, we expect the stimulation. And we expect it to a considerable extent at the 3rd degree when monadic purpose will begin to come into view. And it continues to expand after that point. You say, well, you don't have a body, but you can generate the replica via a Maya Varupa process. And there's no reason to think that that body must demonstrate only what a previous initiation had been able to express through it. Now, with new initiations, maybe new developments in the body can be expressed. In other words, if I was looking at the head center of a master of the 5th degree who had created a Maya Varupa, and I was looking at the head center of a 3rd degree initiate who had his own body which had not been created by a Maya Varupa, or let's say a 4th degree initiate just before his death, I would not expect to find the same type of stimulation. I would expect to see more head center stimulation in the Maya Varupa of the master. And if I was looking at a Chohan, or a 7th degree Chohan, with a Maya Varupa, and I was looking, yes, I would not expect that their head center would be limited in its expression, its expansion, to what it was when they were simply a master, supposing that they were a master and had a normally generated physical body, not a Maya Varupa. So in other words, what I'm saying is the Maya Varupa, I think, will allow of expanded expression according to the degree of the initiate generating it. More expression for the 7th than the 6th, more expression for the 6th than the 5th, more expression for the 5th than the 4th. So anyway, let's see, so my original sense here, we would not expect the crown stimulation much before the 1st degree. Well, it's there. So this is fitting, I say, as the crown is the 7th chakra, and the 1st initiation is associated with the 7th petal. So by numerical resonance, there will be stimulation. We now continue with the unfoldment of the second petal of love, the 8th petal overall. Oh, heavens. Well, friends, this has been tough. Maybe, I don't know, who's it been tougher on? Has it been tougher on me or tougher on you? But at least I've seen what I consider to be adjustments that have to be made in my own assessment. I have accounted for these adjustments in the text while not coming down decisively and deciding which should be which. And this time I think I've done that. If I can just freeze this in my mind and realize why I have frozen it. So this is the end of Egoic Lotus webinar commentary, program 27, and it's 3 hours and let's say 17 minutes, and it's been TCF 542. Is that correct? No, 541. 541. And continuing, beginning of Egoic Lotus webinar commentary, program 28 of a certain amount of time, TCF 541 and 542. And this is 541. Well, you know, one day, maybe all of this will be nicely condensed, and you won't have to go through the sort of comparative reasoning process that I've had to go through here, which, you know, sort of shows work going on in the 7th petal, where the higher mind is involved, and trying to make a synthesis of it all, maybe getting some influence from the knowledge synthesis petal. All right, so that's going to be the end of our work for right now, and we'll see you in program, this should be 28 shortly. Lots to think about. See you soon. Bye-bye.